Hi, welcome back. This is Chapter 4, Measuring Your Competitive Advantage. Chapter 4 is, basically if you're a company, if you want to manage something or you need to quantify it, you need to measure it. And so in order for companies to better understand their performance in various areas, they need to be able to measure their ability to produce profits, produce efficiency, produce excellence. So there's a huge multitude of different ways to measure these things. So this chapter 4 just goes over some of the basics. Um, so if we have a competitive advantage, we want to know exactly what that is and quantify it as best as possible so we could take advantage of it. Okay. Now, in previous chapters, we went over benefits minus costs, and we wanted to establish a more quantitative assessment of this. And being able to quantify it is one way of validating our claims to superiority, documenting improvements in the process, because companies are all about continuous improvement. So we want to measure the benefits minus costs at one point in time and show how we're improving that moving forward to the future. So this gives us a track record, it gives us evidence, and it gives us a clearer picture of our economic ability to perform in the future. We also need the data on the benefits minus costs to give us a better idea of pricing, how we're going to price our products, and other tactical and strategic decisions we're going to make in the future. So it's a must for any company. All right, so the first one we're going to talk about is value-added analysis. Now, this is something that hopefully, if you have any finance textbook and you look into it, you'll see value-added analysis or maybe economic value-added. And what it's trying to look at is how much profits does a company start to build up as the product moves from beginning through their vertical chain from raw materials to manufacturing to finished goods to distribution to ultimate retail sale. So where is the profit being generated in the efficiencies? Now, if we have a particular strategy, this value added, measuring it along the way, helps us identify where we're creating profit or where are we losing money so we can improve upon it. All right, so here are some steps in the value-added analysis. One, identify all the business units involved in their vertical chain. So let's just discuss what a vertical chain is first. Okay, so a company can have multiple levels in this vertical chain, from the producer of the raw materials to the manufacturing of the raw materials, turning it into finished goods, to the distributor of the finished goods, to the owner of the retail level. So you can have a company that's completely vertically integrated. Look at a Long Island company, Nature's Bounty. They source and the raw materials and produce their vitamins, manufacture, package. They operate the distribution center. They operate their own websites for the mail order. They have their own retail locations to sell their vitamins through. So they're a complete company. Have 100% of their vertical chain is owned within the company. Some companies may prefer just to purchase from a manufacturer and resell, sort of like a Toys R Us. They're a retail outfit and they purchase from various manufacturers and just sell. Now, if Toys R Us actually made their own toys and designed them and sold only their own toys, then they would be more vertically integrated. For some businesses, it's a benefit. For some businesses, it's not a benefit. So, but all businesses need to know, this process and where the value is. They have to be able to compute the profits of what we call business units. So a business unit may be the manufacturer of converting raw materials to the tablets in, say, Nature's Bounty. That could be one business unit. A second business unit could be the packaging of the tablets into finished good vitamin bottles and selling them to retail stores. The third business unit may be the actual retail stores themselves. So we want to see where are we making the most profits in this process, uh, and we want to compare it to transactions in the open market or against other companies doing the same thing and see how we stack up. All right. Okay, so there are a couple different strategies um, to doing this that companies can utilize mathematically, quantitatively. Um, so there is if you want to measure your costs, your competitors' costs, also there are 5 steps, and this is just one methodology. Okay, so one would be to get a list of the industry cost drivers. What is causing costs in the industry? This could be labor, materials, transportation, and then you want to rate the cost driver on a scale, on a 5-point scale. And you want to rate each firm's relative position on this scale of the cost driver. So on this 5-point scale, 1 would be a very low importance, and 5 would be a high importance or a high factor of a high measure of importance. So we'd multiply the importance ratings by the relative position rating, the cost driver, and that would equal the cost driver score. The firm's overall position is the sum of all these cost driver scores, and the lower the score, the better. Okay, so if you look on page 80 in the textbook, the Kellogg's on Strategy, table 4.2, you'll see that they give you a little chart here. And for example, the first thing we want to do is list the cost drivers. So here they have economies of scale, economies of scope, learned economies, capacity utilization, wages, labor efficiency, material purchases, material efficiency. So they want you, the first column, they want you to rate the importance of, in the industry from 1 to 5, with 1 being high and 5 being low. And then 2, they want to rate your firm's relative position, with 1 being the best and 5 being the least preferred position. Multiply the 2 columns together, add up the total, and the lower the score, the more efficient your company. So that's one way. And they give an example on page 81 of a hospital, and they have a score of overall score of 67, which doesn't mean much unless you actually also score your competitors. So that way you can see where you fit in, and then you can also kind of get an idea of where you need to improve. All right, so this is a quantifying, methodology, not one that everybody uses, but just an example of a way a company could quantify their cost advantage. Okay. Now let's look at the benefit side. How are we going to quantify a benefit? So how much consumers value a benefit? That's not always an easy question to answer quantitatively. Now, if the product reduces the amount a consumer spends, that could be a benefit, a quantifiable benefit. So if you buy a product that will, say you buy a product that, like a vacuumless bag, a vacuum that does not use vacuum bags. So if it's the same price as a vacuum that does use vacuum bags, you're going to be saving on not having to buy vacuum bags. Maybe it's a digital video recorder over a VCR, where you would have to use tapes, but in a digital video recorder, you don't have to use tapes. So you save in the tapes. It could also be, in the film industry, when you have the digital camera versus the film camera, there's not the expensive processing charges. But of course, there are many examples. Here, we want to measure it by computing in all the costs, of course. But say, for example, a car that saves you 2,000 gallons of gas over its lifetime, times the cost of a per gallon is an example. So if you're going to buy a Prius and you say, okay, the Prius gets 50 miles per gallon versus the 25 miles per gallon of my current car, and I use X amount of gallons in a 5-year period times an average cost of, say, $3 a gallon or $3.50 a gallon, then you can actually come up with a number saying, I'm going to save X amount of money by buying this car, Then you look at the price differential between the Prius and the car you would normally buy, say a Honda Accord, and then you can get a rough idea of the benefits of this car. Then also Toyota, they don't make a big deal. They try not to quantify the gas savings cost benefit because I think you don't really always make out with that. However, they always try to add in the benefits of being green and saving the planet, more intangible benefits to the car as well. All right, so let's talk about measuring some tangible benefits, things that are a little bit more easy to measure. Um, so a tangible benefit for a product generally takes in the form of reduction in user costs. So, for example, let's take an example from the Zoom simulation. Okay, so I'm going to switch over. Here is the Zoom simulation, and we're looking at the production page. So if we make an investment, an operational investment, so we're going to look at the economy class, and we make 4 levels of investment, the total investment would be $32 million, or 16 levels of investment. And for each level of investment, there are different cost reductions we get for each level. Now, they essentially amount to $300 per level, and each level is $2 million a purchase. So what does that do? When you make these investments, when you go to actually develop your car, you see here on operational cost reductions, I have $4,800, which is basically 16 levels times 300, $4,800. So when I make my car, so here I'll make a car, I'll put in my characteristics. Okay, so the car labor cost is $6,600, material cost of $13,000. So that should be about, a $20,000 car. Because I'm getting a $1,400 cost reduction, it's only a $1,500 car now. So this is a tangible, quantifiable benefit of me investing in those technologies in my production facilities, which is going to certainly increase my profit margin. Okay, so there's an example from the Zoom simulation. So that's a tangible benefit of the cost reductions by investing in those. So that's an example from the simulation we're using. And there are many examples now out there as well, which I'll go over a few in a minute. So one way to do this tangible benefits is we can break out our production process into discrete steps. Now, which means that if we're going to break out a production process, we have to look at various things that the company needs to do to bring the product from initial inception, raw materials, semi-finished goods, finished goods to finished product, and see all of the steps along the way and try to figure out where we could save money. Where we could save money for the consumer or for us or for the middleman, no matter, it's just any aspect of this chain. Now they have something called a waterfall chart. If you look in page 84 in the textbook on figure 4.1, they create a waterfall chart for cola products. And if you construct a waterfall chart, you're going to want to display the costs in each production step. And also you want to detail when consumers use a rival product. And then that kind of makes the waterfall goes down, displays the costs when consumers use the product. All right, so if we look at this chart, we'll see that, let's see, this is done in euros, interestingly enough. Okay, so the raw material sugar, €3, and then the next level is the packaging cost, €7, then the processing cost, €4, and then other material cost, €3. So that's the height of the waterfall. Now, other material costs, €3.5, and now here we go, processing costs, packaging costs, and then maximum willing to pay for corn syrup. Now, this is the all-in cost of producing with sugar. So on one side we have the sugar production, and the other side we have corn syrup. So we have one scale ramping up on the sugar, and the other side we're ramping down on the corn sweetener. Uh, so the difference between the two sides is €2. So that's why that small slight savings is why all the soda manufacturers moved from cane sugar to corn syrup, because they found a tangible benefit in the reduction of costs by using corn syrup. And interestingly enough, there's been a lot of studies that corn syrup, high fructose corn syrup, is terrible for your body and does horrible things to it. And a lot of sodas have been switching back to cane sugar and promoting the fact that they're using cane sugar, which is a healthier alternative. I think the difference between the two is probably minimal, but this is a current trend where they're trying to create the intangible benefit of saying we're using cane sugar, so the product is healthier for you. How does a consumer quantify one can of soda being healthier than the next? Do they feel it's healthier? Did it, it's such a hard thing to quantify. I guess you would have to, if someone drank cane sugar instead of corn syrup for the entire life, where is the benefit? Is it that they don't, they are healthier, thinner, less prone to disease? I mean, these are things that they're not easily able to quantify. All right. So the final step, like I said, in this waterfall chart, where you're basically setting up one side as one particular way of producing and the other side is an alternate way of producing, and seeing if there's any benefit. So any gap that is produced as you're increasing the waterfall from the very bottom to the top of the process, you're going to have a total amount of euros or dollars. This chart uses euros. And then when you do the alternate process on the way down the waterfall, whatever gap is left will be your cost-saving benefits. So that's one exercise of measuring those tangible benefits. Now another way of looking at it is willingness to pay. So we want to describe the benefit the product has in quantitative terms, and we want to ask the consumer how much are they willing to pay for the benefit, because pricing is a difficult step for a lot of companies. What's the correct price for the product? We don't want to undersell the price. We don't want to oversell the price. Now, I have an example. Let me just finish the slide. Pick a price and ask if the customers or respondents are willing to pay more. If yes, then you raise the price again until they get to a point of indifference. So say you do a study group of an amount of people, put a product in front of them and saying, would you pay $10 for this? Would you pay $20 for this? Until they say, get to the point where most of them say, no, I would not pay that much. It's not worth that much. For example, I sold a couple cars on Craigslist, and what I usually do is I'll put a price in the car. Maybe it's a used a car, and I'll put a price up, the pictures and the specifics of the car, and put a price up to say $2,000. Now, if I get 20 phone calls in 30 minutes, I know I've priced it too low. So I'll remove the ad, put another ad up for say $2,500. And I'll keep doing this process till I get to a point where I put a final price up, say maybe $3,000, and I only get about 3 to 5 calls in the hour. Now I know I've got a price that's more correct for the vehicle. So that's an example of how I did a willingness to pay through Craigslist selling a used car. And if I've grossly underpriced the vehicle, I can tell by the amount of interest in the car. And if I've overpriced it, I can tell by the lack of interest. So there's an example. Here's another example that I crafted for you to think about. How much would you pay for accessible parking on the Stony Brook campus? Meaning that would you pay $50 a semester if you were allowed to park anywhere on campus, any spot available, handicap spots, faculty spots, any private spots, any gated area, no problem to park anywhere on campus at any time. Never get a ticket. Even park right on the grass or drive your car right up next to the classroom and get out. Most people say, yeah, I'd pay $50 for that. But would you pay $100 for that a semester? A lot of students would say yes. Would you pay $200? Now some students may say yes, many would say no, and then if I said, okay, would you pay $500 for that privilege? And only a select few would pay that much. So there's an example of, if you think about it, well, $50 sounds like a great deal because it is very inconvenient to park on campus. But when it gets up to about $200 or more, you may start to think about it and say, you know what, I'll just park where I'm supposed to park because that is a lot of money. Okay. Now, a conjoint analysis, we want to use surveys to develop how much consumers value each benefit. So it's sort of a regression analysis that we're going to use to reveal the willingness to pay. Okay, so in this conjoint analysis, this is an analysis where we're going to give a product a bundle of features or attributes, and then we're going to ask people individually to decide on the importance of, I guess, on a scale from 1 to 10, if you would definitely purchase this feature. Sorry, on the one lower side, would definitely not purchase the feature, and the higher side, the 10 side, definitely purchase the feature. So we could list, say if it was, we're talking about the Zoom simulation, we could list these in a conjoint analysis. We could list fuel economy, engine power, safety features, luxury features, reliability of the car. We could also put the price, and we could say, please rate. If you had a car with a fuel economy of 37, would you definitely would purchase that car? So rate that on a scale of 1 to 10. So they could rate these features on a scale of 1 to 10, and then we could do a regression analysis. And we could do a regression analysis that would, this is a mathematical thing. You could actually do in Excel if you load in the data analysis tools, or if you took a data analysis class, you could use statistical software to create a regression analysis to see that, by integrating these different components, how much of their purchasing decision is the result of a group of these components. And then you can solely strip out one or two of the components and see if their purchasing decision position goes up higher as we take away some of the variance in the multiple regression. Sort of an interesting example, a little bit more statistical way of looking at a willingness to pay, but trying to see the power of bundled options rather than just the single product itself. Okay, there's also hedonic pricing, which is, first you have to understand what hedonic pricing is. If you go to Wikipedia, actually has a good definition of this. In economics, hedonic regression, hedonic demand theory, is a revealed preference method of estimating demand or value. It decomposes the item being researched into different characteristics, obtains an estimate of the contribution of each characteristic, and then can also use a regression analysis to gauge the value of these different components. So there's just sort of a brief overview, but so let's explain this characteristic a little bit more, because I think this can be confusing for students. It's like the conjoined analysis. You want to price each component of the product. So each attribute to the product, we want to try to price it separately. Now, the key difference is that the hedonic pricing analysis uses data on actual purchases, where the conjoint analysis is just surveys. So the advantage is that consumers do not always behave as they claim to behave in a survey. So this is actual data we're using. The disadvantage is that the pricing models cannot be applied to new product attributes. So we basically have to work with what's out there already and what's already been purchased. So the basic idea here is actually not, if you on the just looking at the very top level is not that difficult. So you obtain data on the product prices and the different attributes of the product, and use a regression analysis to reveal the dollar value of each of these attributes. So again, using the regression analysis to statistically put a value on these different individual components. Now let's see, the dollar value, I guess, it's all, the devil is in the details of using this pricing strategy. Okay, so we could think of, different attributes of service. Uh, is the service quicker? Is it faster? How much is that worth to a customer? Is the product have unique features or advantages that other products don't? So this model of pricing really uh, needs a more specific mathematical example to get an idea of how it works properly. But here I just want you to get the concept of it, which would be like the conjoint analysis. It's just looking at the different attributes of a product and then trying to put a value on them. But the hedonic pricing uses actual data, and that's the difference between the conjoint analysis of the two. They both use regression analysis to interpret, how much a product should be priced based on its individual components. Another way of looking at this is, excuse me, the dollar value of the benefits of the time saved. So think of it like this. You make a certain amount of money per hour. So you could kind of measure the time saved by multiplying it by your hourly wage. So say, for example, that you could order your groceries online through Stop and Shop Peapod service and have it delivered to your house. And you estimate that this will save you 2 hours a week. However, you can't use coupons when you do it. You may actually be able to use coupons in real life, but I'm just using it for my example. So you'd say, okay, I'm going to pay about $10 more between the delivery charge and the coupons I can't use. However, it saves me 2 hours of my time, and I make $25 an hour, so I'm saving $50 by this cost-saving method. Okay. Let's see. We think we got a little. Sorry for the interruption. I ran out of disk space on my hard drive and had to create some. Okay. So we were talking about the dollar value of a benefit in time versus the savings to figure out whether or not something's worth it. So you can think of it like this. If I make $25 an hour, is it worth it to pay $10 to see a 2-hour movie? So that would put it, but that's not saving me any time, but that's saying that you're comparing the hours you spend at work in relationship to the value of something. So when I look to buy something, I'll say, okay, this TV will cost me, I'll have to sit at my desk at work for 50 hours to buy this TV. Is that worth it? Puts in perspective when you're buying something, the amount of actual work you put into earning the money for the object you're buying. So given that concept, as far as value, if there's something that saves you time, for example, I could spend the weekend raking my leaves in my yard to rake and bag all my leaves, or I could hire someone for $300 to do it. So you say, you know what, if I just work, some overtime, or that's one day worth of work for me, then it's well worth it for what I'm saving. So this is something that when you make a product that's a time-saving product, or it saves a consumer maybe gas or materials, you want to publicize it. You want to actually try to highlight, the savings value of the product, and that will help increase the person's willingness to pay that product for that product. Okay. Multi-nominal choice modeling. Now this is something a little bit more statistical. Now, since in today's day and age we have a vast amount of data collected from credit cards, scanners at the retail level, at the supermarket level. So there's a huge amount of actual data collected on the buying behaviors of individuals. And there's also a vast amount of cheap computing ability. Computers today are so powerful that even certain desktops can handle the crunching of these numbers. So it is an advanced statistical research method that something that a PhD level student in marketing or business or finance would look at more closely. But I just want to give you an idea, of how this works and how it could be a benefit. So what we're trying to look for is how much consumer is willing to pay for a product with with specific features. So say for example there are existing products with features and we have all the sales and purchasing data on it. Then we could use this information um, to calculate how the willingness to pay changes when a feature is added or taken away. Uh, for example, I know they're doing some work on laundry detergents and seeing that, if we make the laundry detergent concentrated, so therefore it's a smaller bottle, but you can do more loads with it because we take the water out of it. Is that a benefit for consumers to have the lighter detergent bottle, or do they see that the volume of the bottle, even though they get the same amount of washes out of two different bottles, one that's condensed, one that's not condensed, and the bottle is a third the size, do they still willing to pay the same amount, or do they feel like they're getting less? So you would have to go to, these laundry detergents produce, say, all has the regular all, then they have the triple condensed and the double condensed, and they could just by consumers' behaviors and crunching the numbers, they could see how much they're willing to pay or not pay for this condensing of the material of the laundry detergent. So it can also help point out what features consumers highly value. And then that way, if they see that, okay, consumers value this one feature the most, and maybe we're looking at spaghetti sauce, and then we see that if it's organic, consumers value that the most, and they're willing to pay significantly, even double the price for a product that's organic. So this is something that came up through this multi-nominal choice model, but looking at products that are a regular version, an organic version, an all-natural version, and being able to figure out how much more should we charge, based on how much consumer wants this. We're also able to tell things like market share. Changing your product, how much market share will it will market share improve or decrease by changing certain aspects of your product? If we take our peanut butter and we make it with non-hydrogenated oils, so it's healthier, will we get a bigger market share? Could we charge more for that product? You really need these answers before you put it. You don't want to just put it in the market to test it blind. You want to run it through the statistical model to get a better idea how consumers will react to it. So just to recap, some of the things that can answer by using this statistical model, if you have the right data, of course, like I said, the willingness of consumers to pay for a specific combination of features, how much their willingness to pay will change if one feature is subtracted, what types of consumers most highly value certain features. So if you wanted to break consumers up between age or income demographic, predict the market share of a product's given combination of features or price. So if they make a change, how will it affect their market share? What's the overall benefit position of each seller in the market based on the data? For which customer niche does the seller provide the greatest benefit? So looking at your product and then judging it against various amount of niche markets, which niche market does the product hold the most benefits for? Because if we target them, we could possibly charge a lot more for it if we tailor it to that particular niche, and of course sell it where they're likely to see it and buy it. So this is so think of a world where, and of course, this doesn't help if it's a new feature or a new benefit, because that's the limitation of this model, is that we need data on existing features, existing products, so we could cull through all that data, put together a trend or a price analysis based on all the statistical charging on credit cards or through supermarkets, checkout registers, and to compute what's the benefit of this. Now, another drawback of this is actually getting the data. Having supermarkets that are willing to share this data, having credit card companies that are willing to share this data so you can do these calculations, because in today's market, privacy is a big consideration. Okay, so let's wrap up Chapter 4. I'm actually looking forward to going over Chapter 5. That's Chapter 5 and 6 is more of a favorite chapter for me to discuss. Chapter 4 is just a little too technical for some people, but what we're basically trying to say here is, if we look at, in order for a firm to be able to position their product to get the maximum profit benefit, they really need to have a quantifiable understanding of the benefits of the product minus the cost of the product. So, because you can never really, the product's going to fail if you charge more for the product than the benefits that consumers are seeing from it. So you have to always price has to be underneath the benefits level of the product, for consumers. So this chapter is really just trying to reiterate that you need a quantitative approach to really look at these benefits and costs. So on the cost side, we have certain value-added models and these other types of techniques to really isolate and identify the cost of a product, benefits and to the company of choosing alternate ways of producing the product and what we could save on the cost side. We also want to look at the benefit side. How can we enhance the benefits, the perception of the benefits, the value of the benefits? Because this way we could basically get a better understanding of the maximum price we could sell the product at when given the understanding of what the true benefits of the product is. If you look at Arm & Hammer baking powder, baking soda, for a long time, they didn't really know the true benefits of this product. They just knew that it could, people would use it for a couple of baking needs, and then they discovered, we can try to sell it on its ability to capture odors in the refrigerator, and then they could launch it in a line for its ability to whiten teeth, in a line of toothpaste, for its ability to wash clothes, in a line of soaps. So, at any time you move into a new market, you have to have this data available to figure out what is the best pricing position, how consumers value your product, to get a better overall idea of price, because you don't want to undercharge and you certainly don't want to overcharge. So this is really a chapter just to think about the quantitative mechanics of looking at these concepts and trying to, develop a baseline and a track record for your company to keep track of these different charges and these different numbers. Okay, looking ahead, we're going to move into chapter 5 and 6 soon. We talk more about competition and the uniqueness in the strategies, strategic positioning of competition between firms. These lectures will be a lot longer than the first 4 chapters, so chapter 5 and 6 will be a little bit more time-consuming lecture. So I look forward to going over that with you soon. And remember to keep up with your assignments under the Blackboard tab assignments, and also to keep track of the discussion board and see what discussions I've posted at the end of each of these lectures. Okay, take care. See you next time.